I'm going to go ahead and call to order this meeting of the Greenfield Conservation Commission at 6:32 p.m. on March 8th, 2022. All commissioners are currently present. As you know, this meeting is being held virtually, and if any technical interruption to the meeting occurs and the meeting ends, we will not resume it tonight, and all items will be automatically continued at the next scheduled meeting date, which would be in 2 weeks. Mitch, okay, yep. This meeting is being recorded, and if anyone else is recording the meeting, you're required to let me know at this time or when you begin recording. Okay, I do not hear anyone recording. The first item on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes, February 22nd, 2022.
Motion to accept the minutes from March 2nd, 2022.
Second.
What is February?
Sorry, Erica.
Sorry, Eric, I think you were correcting that it was February 2022. Okay. All right, so we have a motion to accept the minutes that was seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to mention that my first name was being used as opposed to last name. Doesn't matter to me, but I just want to make sure Mitch knew that that was my first name. So.
Okay.
That's pretty consistent throughout the minutes. It's a change from previous minutes. So in the past, the minutes of Commissioner Lindsay or Commissioner, but
I think it was all your last names and my first name, but really I don't. Oh no, it wasn't. Okay, I take it back.
Is there a preference on last name or first name, or just be consistent?
No preference, just consistent. Yeah.
Okay.
oh yeah, it is inconsistent. It is my first name. It's Kristen's last name that's used.
Right. Any other comments on the minutes? Okay, not hearing any other comments. We will vote to accept those minutes. All opposed to accepting the minutes? Anyone abstaining? I know Fletcher is abstaining from all votes during this meeting because he has not been able to swear in yet. All right, so that passes four votes for, 1 abstaining. The next thing on our agenda is a public meeting, but I'm going to go ahead and make a motion right now to postpone that public meeting until after our next item of business, which is Mayor Wiedegardner discussing the city's retention of the property at Stone Ridge Lane. I think the mayor may have a limited amount of time. Sorry, Rachel, was that a second?
If you need a second, I'll second.
Okay, yeah, we'll just vote on it. Anyone opposed to postponing the public meeting? Fletcher's abstaining. Anyone else abstaining? Okay, so that passes, and we will proceed to Mayor Wiedegardner discussing the city's retention of the property at Stone Ridge Lane, parcel R03-2, and immediately after that, we will return to our public meeting. So,
Right there. Oh, okay. Ready for me? Hi, folks, and thank you for taking me out of order here. I really appreciate it, and thank you for what you're doing here this evening. I guess I need to be informed about what it is exactly that you're asking. If you would please let me know what you're interested in doing, then I think we can have a discussion. My understanding is that you want some version of access to control over the 13-acre parcel that belongs to the city. So just let me know what it is you're interested in, and I'm happy to discuss it this evening or take it under consideration and come back to you with a recommendation. So just let me know what it is exactly that you're proposing.
Okay, I can take a stab at that, at what we've discussed. Essentially, we want, or my understanding is that we want the 13-acre parcel to be treated as conservation land, the same as other conservation land in town.
Okay.
And typically conservation land is under the custody and control of the Conservation Commission. And in order to do that, the process would be that city council would vote, well, the mayor would request that the city council vote to transfer it. They would vote to transfer custody and control of the parcel to the Conservation Commission. And then it would be conservation land, and that gives the property protection that it currently doesn't have. Currently the next mayor could come along and sell the property as it is right now. But if it's under the custody and control of the Conservation Commission, it would require the Conservation Commission's approval. City council would have to vote, and the state legislature would have to vote to move it out of Conservation Commission control. So it basically offers wider protection for the property. And that would, additionally, being conservation land, the Conservation Commission has conservation land regulations that apply to conservation land. And so that would apply to that parcel as well. And it's right up against existing conservation land, the Rocky Mountain Conservation Land, which is under control of the Conservation Commission. So essentially, it would just extend that conservation land to encompass the 13-acre parcel.
Okay.
So if anyone else wants to speak up, that's my understanding.
Well, thank you. That's helpful. I suspected that was what you had in mind. I am going to say this about what you just said. I don't have any problem with your ask on this. I do know that the deed is very specific about that particular property, if I'm not mistaken. So I would want to take a look at that first, but then get back to you with a decision on it. I have no problem with the Conservation Commission, whether it's you folks or anybody down the line, having that as conservation land. I think it's a wonderful way to protect that land. And as you say, it abuts the other additional acreage. So it's good to have a seamless, delineation of that property up there. So if you're okay, and I'm happy to take any questions or concerns that you might have about that, but just let me make sure that under the deed, there's no conflict with doing that. My recollection is there isn't. The conflict has more to do with, if anything, how that land is used going forward. And I know you'd be good stewards of it. So let me just double check on that particular property. And then I'll be happy to, be happy to come back to you or send you a formal letter or whatever you want, or both.
Yeah, thanks. And I can just add that, we do have other property, the old Wedgewood Garden property that has like specific deed requirements that, we're not allowed to deviate from. And
that is right.
So that wouldn't be too unusual. And also another thing is that when the city council, if the city council votes to transfer the property, the city council can put additional requirements on the property. So the language that they use to do that can affect what, if they said, we're going to transfer this to you, but public access is not allowed at any time in the future, they could do that, and then we would have to abide by that. Obviously, we don't think that's what would happen, but I'm just letting you know that if there was something in the deed that needed to be enforced, that could, be mentioned in a city council vote like that too.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. So I will take care of that. I will take a look at it, and I will hopefully get back to you before your next meeting.
Okay, that sounds great. Does anyone else have any questions?
I was just going to add that the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions has a lot of resources. So if there's questions after consulting with a legal counsel, they might be able to clarify some things, or you could, if any questions come up that, or discrepancies that are concerning and you want to pass those along to us, we can also use them as a resource to help clarify anything.
All right, thank you.
Do any other commissioners have any questions for the mayor?
Thank you.
For sure.
you.
Thanks.
Okay, well,
All right.
you folks carry on. Have a good meeting, and I'll get back to you.
All right. Thank you for coming to the meeting.
Sure. Bye now.
Okay. So let's move to our public meeting. Request for determination of applicability, proposed building addition, parking, and circulation revisions at 184 Shelburne Road, map 45, lot 22. I see Jeff is here.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Good to see you again. And so, yeah, I can share my screen to give you any of the updates. But essentially, we did provide an updated plan which shows, some revisions to the plant list so that, all natives are included anywhere within the Riverfront area, and then also the addition of some invasive removal on property that they own at the end of the property. And then I think the other, addition or supplemental information that was provided is we did include the stormwater management report for the, for the entire parcel project, which, I'm happy to go through this with you, but, I think I'll just use this diagram if I could, or this plan, because I think it helps to explain things fairly well, in that, so we've really separated the two drainage systems. And so where you see this green dashed line here, all of this water as it exists now is going through the existing drainage system. We're going to relocate a couple of catch basins, but otherwise, reduce as much of the area that we can that is going to that system. That's all going through a treatment chamber and being treated accordingly. There is an increase in pervious area within the inner riverfront area, and then everything that you see in the top portion of the property or project is being managed with its own stormwater management system, which again was what really the stormwater management report goes on to explain. And all that has been submitted and will be submitted to the planning board for their review, along with the stormwater permit. So I don't know. Yeah, I know there was some talk about, I noticed intent and the need for, larger permitting efforts. And I guess all I'd say is just in looking at, the redevelopment standards for Riverfront. So this is under 310 CMR 10.585A, which, this project would be applicable under as a redevelopment project. And so there's 5 under redevelopment, there's 5 standards that we would need to meet. The first one is that at a minimum, it's got to be an improvement over existing conditions. And so, I would contest that with the reduction in impervious area and managing stormwater according to current standards, and keeping that, as far away from the riverfront area as we can, is certainly an improvement. The second standard is that stormwater has got to be managed according to the state standards. So we're certainly doing that. The third standard is that the work can be no closer to the riverfront boundary as it exists now, and ideally any improvement should be located further away from the riverfront and outside of riverfront area. And so again, most of the expansion is to the north and outside of the riverfront area boundaries, and we are reducing impervious areas closest to the river. And then lastly, it should not exceed, current conditions. And again, we're trying to provide additional landscaping, closest to the river and improvements to the stormwater system to the extent that we, have control over that, to improve that to the extent possible. So yeah, that's sort of where we stand, and happy to entertain any questions.
Thanks, Jeff. I just had a question. So I apologize. I'm not a stormwater engineer, and I'm not an expert at deciphering stormwater reports, but it looks like the stormwater volume is certainly going to increase because the impervious surface area is increasing 6,200 square feet.
Yep.
So how are you improving the stormwater runoff then? Can you just walk us through that a little bit in more detail?
So as with any project, the standard is that we've got to comply with the standard. So it's not to say that we're not increasing stormwater. It's to say that it's got to be, the standard is that we've got to manage it in, for both attenuation and for stormwater quality. And so those are the 2 standards. And when I say improvements, basically we are picking up some of the existing stormwater that's coming into that system now and running that through this new system. So we're reducing the flows that are leaving the site now in the current condition, if that makes sense.
So it's a storm scepter, or what is this facility you're talking about?
Well, so there's a vortex unit on a vortex, they're all sort of, name brands, but there's a system on the current site that serves all that existing drainage. We're also installing one for the new drainage system before that discharges anywhere.
And am I missing that somewhere in this stormwater report that maybe you could point me to that shows the difference in the cubic feet, or CFS, cubic feet per second, the difference in volume, I guess, that would be treating, how you're improving that, in other words?
Well, so that, like I said, it's what we're reducing is we're taking some of the impervious area from what is behind the hotel now and directing that toward our system. And so,
Okay.
the improvement is that we're not pushing all of that existing stormwater through the existing system that discharges closer to the river, that we're taking that out and around. We're storing, most of that storage occurs up here. This, we've got a treatment chamber here, right in this island that's collecting all of the runoff that we can from the new parking lot, and from as much of the existing as we can. That's being treated, stored, for the larger storms, under the parking lot, underground, and then that gets discharged back to the drainage system that is in Shelburne Road now.
Jeff, do you have the stormwater report open? I was just looking at it. The table 1 on page 4, I think might be helpful to look at.
Sure. Yep.
So I think, Kristen, that might have been what you were asking, where it's showing the existing
Peak flow rates, right,
yeah, peak flow rates, and they're being reduced.
right.
Thanks. And it is helpful to visualize what you were just showing, Jeff, how
Right.
more is being kind of directed to the north. So it's not just all getting, pushed down to the city municipal storm drainage and then just going right into the river.
Yep.
Did we figure out what's going on with the BLSF? Did you look at that further, Jeff?
I did. I can't find any evidence that the site is located in floodplain. Yeah, I didn't do a whole lot more other than just looking at, elevations and floodplains. I didn't see anything that, this whole, obviously this whole area is roughly the same elevation, and I didn't see that as an issue.
Jeff, going back to the stormwater for a second, the southern edge of the parking lot where there's storm drains for the existing stormwater along the curb there, it's in pretty poor shape, the pavement and the asphalt there, and I was curious if that area is slated for repaving and if there's any changes that are being made to the stormwater structures that are already existing along that southern edge.
So, and you're talking about this entrance here off of sort of Shelburne Road, is that where you're referring to?
I was
Or-
actually talking about the parking that noses in toward the riverbank, toward the resource area.
So these, yeah.
And then one farther to the, I guess that's not the south because it's not oriented north. Yeah, exactly.
So this stretch here, yeah. I mean, I know there's some work that they're going to have to do in this parking lot just to reroute utilities and realign some of these curbs. We are trying to maintain as much as we can, but I do recognize that pavement is in pretty poor shape, and it may mean that they have to resurface a little bit more than just what's immediately being expanded on the other side. Other than adjusting grates and rims and cleaning that up so that it functions properly, there wouldn't be any changes proposed to the way that system functions. It would just be trying to fix some of the potholes and some of the irregularities, I think, to smooth that out, to try to get water to go where it's supposed to.
So no topographic changes,
No,
no cut and fill.
no.
Okay.
Nope, not in the existing lot.
Jeff, did you, I'm sorry if you mentioned this already, but I know last time we had talked about all of the planting within the riverfront area being native plants. Is that updated on this?
So yes, so that is, yeah, so we did update. There were a handful of species or cultivars that may not have been considered native. So these have all been revised to native species within the project. And so this is a plant list that is both within Riverfront and outside of. So it was a little bit more comprehensive.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And Jeff, I see you added removal of invasive species along that portion there that's owned in the south.
Right.
Is there also plans to add native vegetation there, or?
I mean, it is not currently. I mean, we could certainly propose something. I think, again, it's a relatively tough area to manage, just given the slopes and the fact that it's outside of a fence line and whatnot. But we could certainly propose, some low maintenance, cover in there or something that would be appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, when I did a site visit, I had mentioned those two trees, or one large tree and one smaller tree that have been just lost from that area.
Mhm.
It's you know, the sod's kind of in questionable shape, and then there's the invasives and like a bank that you know is only semi-stable because of the invasive root system probably.
Yep.
So I think it would potentially be detrimental just to remove them and not do anything.
Mhm.
But also I have concerns about the sort of toe of the slope there and past that as well. Like I just think with minimal effort, a lot could be done to mitigate not just water sheet flow there, but also, you know, trash washing over, and then of course also stabilizing the bank with
Mhm.
some native root systems. Um, I mean, to me, that's just like you know, probably pennies compared to a lot of the other work they're doing.
Mhm.
And if, yeah, I just think if you're gonna spend the time removing that invasive vegetation, it would be great to see a plan to add native stuff to that area as well.
Mhm.
Even
If there's
willow stakes, they're
Yeah.
they're cheap. You just you know, you just stick them in.
Yep.
Is Sweet Spire native?
Well, I guess it depends on which list you look at. Yeah. We can, you know, again, I don't think we're married to anything. If there's anything on there that's questionable, or, you know, we're not necessarily married to these specific plants. It's making sure that we have something that will survive and that can be managed and maintained a little bit.
And just the other commissioners, I thought I had replied to the email chain with this, but I added photos that I took as well before the snow, and it shows that southern area pretty good, just for context.
Do you want to share those photos right now?
Sure. Right. See. Um, can you see that on my screen here?
Yes.
Um, so there's the lawn of that southern area. So if you see on the plan where the invasive removal is called out, that's it. You can see the smaller of the trees that have recently been lost there. And then, so there's a sort of a further back view of that area with some sort of landscaping materials. And in the background of that, you can see the larger tree stump back there that was recently lost. And then, you know, I assume this is kind of like the main invasive vegetation patch here. Let's see if I got any shots of the actual bank there. It's kind of slow to load these. So that's one side of the fence going down. It's actually the back side. Let me close out of this and see if I can jump to the other side real quick. Might be the best I got right there. So yeah, you can kind of see that bank going down to the area where invasives would theoretically be removed, but you know, there's not a lot holding it all together in general, I don't think, aside from those root systems and these trees. So I think it would be nice to see vegetation maybe along the grassy area, even if it's set back a bit, and something to kind of stabilize this slope as well, especially if this is removed.
Rachel, I think you had some photos too. Did you? Are there any that you want to share that would be helpful? You are muted right now, by the way.
Everything changes once you share. Can't find my unmute button anymore. Um, yeah, similar. There was snow on the ground when I was there, so the evidence.
Sorry, Rachel. We're seeing Gmail right now.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
Google Chrome.
we're not seeing an actual email though, so that's good.
Okay.
The last window you were on was were the pictures.
The last window I was on was the picture, so it did work.
Like right before you cut away, we saw the Google Drive list of pictures there. Not that's back to the email. There you go.
There you go.
Okay. So there's snow on the ground, top of bank. There were some flags, remnant, tattered and faded. This is the area of invasive that Fletcher was just talking about as well. It's I saw winged anonymous, bittersweet, multiflora rose, and Japanese knotweed. So those were what I could pick out kind of quickly. There's also a lot of trash in this area. And there doesn't appear to be any trash cans in the back. So I think a possible significant improvement, although it's a little bit of an unusual one for us, would be to like put a trash can by the picnic table, because there's soda cans and beer cans and all kinds of like there's a pretty significant amount of litter that is making its way down into the past the top of bank. And this was the edge of the parking lot that I was looking at the asphalt. There is a curb, and I would say like that's definitely a necessary curb for the functioning of the stormwater system. It was hard for me to tell if it's still intact and functioning properly because of the snow, but that might be more visible in Fletcher's photos. Guess that's the area for the expansion. And then this was another area. It looks like the fence had at one point continued, maybe, and the top of bank is just left with a series of like partial fence posts or poles just off of the parking lot, and then the fence ends. I'm not sure if that's like a previous version of a fence that wasn't cleaned up properly once it was disassembled, or whether it was intended to have a fence that continues along the top of bank for the property. And the fence is just in disrepair and has never been repaired. So you can see where this is in pretty bad shape, and then there's these additional there's a fence that are just left in place but don't appear to be serving any purpose.
Rachel, do you mind hopping into the folder I put up? Just because I have a view of that section from ground level that you were just focused on there. And there is like I don't know what to call it, an old slab or retaining wall or something that is sort of melting away, that apparently they're just kind of dumping landscape material onto, which is then just sloughing off into the It's floodplain, call it, but it's
I'm
maybe it is near here, but it's from like a perpendicular angle looking up that. If you go through a couple more. It'll be really close to ground level in that same spot.
this guy.
No, no, it's much closer to the parking lot. That's off their property anyway. Why they're so out of order, but no, keep going. Keep going. Must be at the beginning. We're getting closer. There we go. So that's right where you were just talking about, and as you can see, there's just kind of like landscape material that's probably constantly replenished and constantly washed away.
Mm.
That you know, I don't know what the solution is, but you know, that's definitely a contribution to from this property to the stream that we probably all like to see discontinued.
Yeah, that's really good. You couldn't see that under the snow.
Mm. Just to state the obvious, you know, this once they join and then they exit through that large double culvert there and go under the highway, it, you know, straight to the Green River, and that water was disgusting when I saw it. So every little bit we can do, you know. I mean, I've seen people swimming just slightly downstream of there, and that was their choice, but gross, you know.
Yeah, and it's an endangered species habitat, and it's a cold water fisheries habitat. So, yeah, everything we can do.
Yep. Like, I guess I'm sorry. Did anyone want to
I just want
say
to put
anything
that,
else? Yeah.
that's right where the fence is missing, right? The same place.
Yep. Exactly.
Okay, that's, yeah, I noticed that too. Yeah. Is that on their property or no? Is that past their property?
It's real close.
It makes me wonder if they're sure, since they didn't do anything with that fence line. Like the fence just suddenly stops, the newer fence, and then stops. So it makes me wonder if it's clear to them, but could have been any other reason. But
So we've gone over a lot of little details here and there. I'm not sure if are there specific, if this was a negative determination, are there specific conditions that we're asking?
I think there's a lot of
just pause?
opportunity for improvement, which is basically what the Wetlands Protection Act performance standards require for redevelopment in riverfront area. What's the snow management? What's the planting plan? How are the invasive species going to be managed? Will the commission be notified if there's chemical treatment? Will the slope be stabilized? You know, gosh, I get the fence, the garbage, you know, I think we've touched on a lot of little things on how this riverfront area can be redeveloped with an improvement to the existing conditions. I don't know how those would be folded into special conditions. We did touch on a lot.
So just to touch on that real quick. So, I mean, to the extent, that improvements or, other, things can be done toward the riverfront, the property line really is right along the back of the curb here. We've got some opportunity to do something here. We're certainly pushing all of the development that we can in the other direction away from riverfront. I'm sure that the applicants are fine with committing, some improvements over to this, on this side, and anywhere, I've heard things about a trash can, and I think some of those are perfectly reasonable requests, along with making sure that the existing curb line and drainage system that's there now is functioning properly. But, to the extent that we're going to be expected to improve, this section of riverfront area on state highway land is going to be a tall order.
I don't think we were getting into any of that. I mean, the part we were just focused on was close to that, but I assume it's still on their property, that crumbling retaining wall and stuff. But everything else over there in the south was our real focus. Like we definitely get, I think, not to speak for everybody, but that the property line is where it is.
Yeah, I look at, I don't know. I know when this project was built, looking at the project plans, that there was a prior structure and driveway, access drive and retaining wall that was shown on those plans. I don't have those right in front of me, but there was a wall along this edge, so it doesn't surprise me that there may be some remains of that. Where it sits relative to the curb, there's only about a foot probably from the back of curb to the property line. So if it's within that distance, I think, we can certainly do something, but I think it's going to be a little bit limited as to what they can do. Oops.
So you're saying that the hotel doesn't currently, didn't construct and doesn't currently maintain the fence at all?
Their fence, I believe they do. That the chain link fence that you showed that stands, that is largely standing, I think is their fence. I would suspect that the posts and some of that retaining wall that were seen in some of the pictures probably fall on property that's outside of, what is owned by the hotel, and was part of, what formerly existed. If it's, they may be able to, negotiate cleaning up some of those posts so they're not a hazard. I think I'd be a little bit hesitant to, commit to trying to figure out a way to take that wall out, because I imagine that's probably got some structural component to it with, holding up this parking lot, trying to get the drainage to work and whatnot. But there is certainly, a substantial portion of that fence they do maintain, I know.
I mean, I don't know anything about engineering parking lots, but I assume that parking lot is sort of being potentially undermined there with that loose consolidation on top of the old concrete slab in the picture. I mean, at the least, I would just like to see them not just dump random materials over there, like the landscaping stuff. But if I mean, Jeff, you'd have a better, more informed opinion on this, but if that loose stuff just continues to wash away, and there is a drain right there in the corner, would that sort of potentially undermine the stormwater system at that point? And in that case, would it be in their best interest to shore that up? I don't know how, but.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect there was probably, when that wall was installed, the old one, I imagine it has, goes down to frost. It has a footing, and has some structural fill behind it. So I would suspect that the parking lot is probably built on top of that, material, and that, trying to pull out that entire wall would just sort of cause a lot of the material to.
Oh yeah, no,
fall out.
I wasn't suggesting that.
Gotcha.
It wasn't clear to me whether the part of the blacktop was sitting on top of like sort of unconsolidated material, but
Oh,
Maybe it might just sit flush on that concrete, it sounds like from what you say, but
yeah.
It doesn't appear in the picture like the curb or the asphalt is particularly like it isn't particularly bad shape there, so it doesn't appear like it's being undermined at all. I think the main concern is just the fact that there's this waste material that has the potential to be washed down into the river and or is being added to and washed currently, like
Hmm.
down into the bank. So I don't find the presence of the wall concerning as much as the fact that the hotel is definitely adding mulch there on a regular basis. So they're definitely considering that strip above the wall to be part of their property in terms of how they're maintaining it, because there wouldn't be fresh vegetable mulch there right now if they hadn't touched it since they built the hotel. And so I think that addition of you know, organic materials and dyed red mulch, there's nothing to hold it in place is what's concerning, not the concrete wall.
yep.
So are you saying that bark mulch isn't organic, or is that we need a different organic material, or?
I just don't think there's any
Suggest
reason
whatever,
to
I think.
yeah, I don't think there's any reason to be adding any material over there at all.
Yeah.
It's just going to wash away within the year or two. So,
Yep.
That was my only real comment about that area. And
Sure.
if it's not, again, I just looked at the picture again, and there's almost like close to a foot difference between where the blacktop is and where the visible top corner of the concrete is. And it looks like there's some type of like maybe compacted fill on top of that, but so that was my question, is if the fill's getting washed away, is the curb slowly gonna, but that may not be, it may just be like that I can't see past the fill. So, but yeah, really it's just the dumping of material there and making sure it's not just like continually washed in downslope is all I was mainly concerned with.
Sure.
But, I don't know how, to Kristen's point, I don't know how we would sort of assure compliance on that past, because this is, ongoing over into the future as this place exists. So I don't know what that would look like, but at the very least, some acknowledgement from the client that they will cease that practice. I mean, I know communication with landscape companies, again, is also changing year to year, but maybe it could include something like I don't know, some marker or something to not dump it, or something that indicates that you just don't need to dump stuff over the edge there. Could be helpful, but
We could certainly suggest some signage that goes along a chain link fence that they've got to, no dumping or trash beyond the fence or something like that.
Yep.
Because that would apply along this, entire length, really.
Yep. But yeah, Kristen, you're mentioning some other concerns, like snow removal or removal and storage for one, which I think is
Yeah, I mean,
another.
one of the benefits of filing a notice of intent is there's these orders of conditions that are valid for a certain number of years, and it can be extended, which we can't do with an RDA. And we have some concerns here, and I don't know. I'm a little uncomfortable with this RDA application. I'm just gonna have to go on record with that. Can you speak to the snow removal and snow stockpiling? Is that something that's shown on the plans? Is there a staging area for snow removal? It looked kind of like in the photos, it was just sort of pushed along the top of the berm of the river.
Well, they can't push it anywhere any further beyond the fence because the fence would just go down. So I know that chain link fence certainly provides, you know, a barrier along that edge. You know, for that entire side, I think, you know, I don't know specifically what their management plan is now. I imagine it would be like, you know, most of our other clients where the larger snow events, they try to stockpile it in, you know, in a corner that of the existing parking lot that doesn't get used very often. And, you know, if the stockpile becomes too big to the point where it begins to impact, you know, visitor spaces and the way they function, then it has to get trucked off site. That's just the way, you know.
Do we think maybe that the portion of the chain link fence that is missing was damaged by a plow in the past? Is that possible, or is that a very historic fence? I don't know the history of the site, so I'm not sure.
It looked like there were two different sets of posts to me.
Okay.
Is what it looked like. It looked like they had just cut off the old fence and left the footings and the old posts in place, and then installed their new fence right along their curb line.
Gotcha. Okay.
And just to speak to the notice of intent, I honestly didn't look to see what was contained in the original order of conditions for this project, because I know there had to be an order of conditions issued for the original project. I don't know, there very well may be some language in there that, you know, addresses a lot of the same concerns about snow removal and compliance with, you know, stormwater standards and some of the other things that were discussed that would certainly still, you know, be applicable.
Imagine that that's something that we wouldn't necessarily have available to us, like in our drive. I don't know, Mitchell or Travis.
I'm not sure. I mean, Jeff, do you know what year that would have been approximately?
If it's recorded, I can look it up on the Mass Registry.
Yeah, it should be recorded. Yeah, I don't know when the original permit was filed, to be honest.
Maybe around 2007. Actually, no, it looks like that was something else. Kristen, do you know what the type description is for NOIs that are recorded, or Jeff or anybody?
I always have to fool around whether it's a permit. I always forget. But if you put in the lot, that might be the best way to go about it.
Yeah, I found a bunch of stuff by just 184 Shelburne, but it's, 3 pages.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a funky site. 422.
Looks like there's iron pins out there for that southern corner.
A lot of times these things aren't recorded too.
I don't see it recorded. I think I just clicked through the list and it looks like it's all mortgages and financial information. There's nothing that I see that's from the Conservation Commission.
Yeah, there's no like permit under the type description. It's deeds, easements, mortgage, assignments, liens. No permits. It's possible it wasn't recorded, but we have it in the town, I'm sure, in the town hall records, right?
In the
Or on
paper
the
records,
DEP
I think,
website.
Is there a reason why we can't have the same process in terms of requiring a like maintenance plan for invasive species removal and just a graphic of snow storage presented to us for approval before construction starts?
I had a similar question. I don't know what the limitation is with the box 3 determination. There's just some lines underneath where you can write conditions in. Jeff, do you have any experience with that type of determination with the conditions, or?
No, I've certainly had several projects that we've had a negative determination with a host of conditions. That's certainly not uncommon, and they've varied, varied widely. So, yeah, I certainly amenable to that.
And
So
I'm sorry,
I
just to
wanna
go back to
see-
the, sorry, Rachel, just to go back to the BLSF, you looked at the FEMA ferments.
Mm-hmm. And we did some baseline survey, elevations, just to study, to understand what was, I think that the issue with the ferments, particularly in this location, is the number of culverts and all of the, the waterways, the way that floodplain works. So it's really about the elevations.
Just to speak to like what we can or can't do with the negative determination. this doesn't say exactly what we can or can't do, but in MACC's environmental handbook, 19.2.6, the meaning and contents of a negative determination of applicability, it just says, you know, a negative determination can condition a small project in the buffer zone that is not likely to have an adverse effect on resource areas if, for example, simple erosion control measures are taken. Negative determinations with conditions should be issued cautiously, however. Generally, if there are more than 2 or 3 conditions, or if the failure to abide by a condition would result in damage to the wetland, a positive determination should be issued and an NOI required. The advantage of a negative determination with conditions is less cost, less paperwork, and fewer procedural requirements, yet the commission retains the right to require an NOI if the conditions are not followed. Disadvantages include the fact that no mass DEP file number is issued, no sign is required, no record is kept in the registry, and there is no method of certifying compliance. It is hard for a commission to go to a judge for enforcement when it has already said a permit is not required, and therefore it has no jurisdiction.
Just to go back to your first sentence, that's for buffer zone projects, and we're in resource area.
That is true.
Which,
Mhm.
I mean, box 3 is specifically calls out buffer area, I think. Buffer zone rather, as well, which,
This does say that a negative determination with conditions may be issued by adding on Form 2 after the words for negative box 2 or 3, providing that the work is completed with compliance with the following conditions. And 2
Okay.
would be the proposed work is in an area subject to the commission jurisdiction,
right.
but will not alter a resource area.
Well, I had some more thoughts about the ways that we might be able to accomplish that with conditions, but I think if there's commissioners that are that the larger question at hand is the RD or not. So there's not really any point in discussing conditions here if we're not making a negative determination. So I don't really want to waste the time.
Anyway.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I see merit on both sides. The fact that the MAC blurb you just read, Travis, says, you know, if I guess by our judgment, the negative determination conditions aren't followed, then we could require an NOI. But then it also said that, you know, since you didn't require a permit, it's hard to enforce things after the fact. I guess I'm slightly confused about that part, but, you know, I think Kristen's making some great points about sort of the stewardship kind of going forward and just some specifics that we can't necessarily nail down. But again, if I was like confident that the NOI trigger post, you know, breaking of negative RDA conditions was reliable, then that still seems reasonable to me. But I guess I'm confused as sort of, you know, how, if that just requires like agreement on behalf of the client to just say, oh, okay, well then let's do an NOI, because that doesn't seem super likely.
Yeah, that is a little vague in their guidance. Does anyone have any questions, or would anyone like to make a motion?
Kristen, did you have any other, we talked about, like, I guess, what are some of the things that we are interested in being able to check on in the future or sort of oversee in the future? I think the snow removal's pretty clear, sort of the maintenance along the edge for sure.
Yeah, if there's invasive species management, I think I would want to see the commission notified and maybe given a summary of how that went, just to make sure that that treatment's being conducted by mass licensed herbicide applicators since it's a resource area, and that treatment's being conducted in accordance with mass regulations. So like a notification before and then maybe a written summary after. If there's a replanting plan, do we want to see any kind of follow-up on how the success is? Do we want to be informed on any construction stuff? I don't know if we do, because it doesn't seem like we're going to have a lot of, I don't know. I defer to the commission on that. Gosh, what else did we talk about? Garbage removal. That was something that was obvious in the photos that Rachel presented. I don't know if I'm forgetting. What else did we talk about?
I think that covers most of what I remember.
There is something, so for stormwater detention basins, the commission has the right to review maintenance reports. I don't know if that's something that we would want to ask for quarterly inspection reports on. I don't know, just spitballing here.
Jeff,
So,
sorry, go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say, I think one problem is that if we want to have a lot of ongoing conditions, I don't think an RDA is the best way to have ongoing conditions, because there isn't any like checking afterwards. There's not a formal process for enforcing ongoing conditions like that
Yeah,
that I'm aware of.
that's what I'm trying to determine in my own head, like what are those ongoing things that we'd like to be able to check on. And because I agree, I don't think, unless it's very minimal, that's not an NOI would be the path. But Jeff, I was just going to ask you, do you know, can you remind me what the timeline is for the project, assuming it gets the go ahead in the very near future? I'm sorry, what's their targeted date for the work?
Well, I know they'd like to try to break ground this spring, and get it all constructed this year. I know they're waiting to get through all these permit approvals before they authorize the architects to go into full construction documents. So there's still a month of time that's going to be, taken up and just design with the architects. So yeah, I mean, it's obviously every month or every couple of weeks definitely starts to matter as we get closer.
Yep.
It sounds like, Travis, what you're saying is that if the conditions are one-time conditions, then they can be lumped to a negative RDA, but if the conditions that we're concerned about most are ongoing, then an NOI is more appropriate.
Well, the main reason I was thinking that is because, you know, you're going to have the order of conditions with an NOI that we would be able to enforce, whereas I I don't see that same kind of process for an RDA.
I'm just wondering what the original order of conditions was for the building to start with, because maybe that stuff is already in place. And they
I
maybe
can't
are-
look on EDEP because I can only see what my password is. I don't know how to look up other applicants. I'm sorry. But I bet we have it in the town, right?
In paper files, I would assume, but
Oh, so I found again something that that I saw earlier, and I was trying to find it again. Also in MACC's environmental handbook about conditions on an NOI. It says conditions that won't expire. For example, no salt on a roadway in a sensitive area. It says these must be restated in the certificate of compliance as continuing requirements. Which I think is where the, you know, then they're like attached to that, you know, certificate of compliance going forward. And again, that doesn't happen with an RDA.
But there must have been an original certificate of compliance for the original building. I think.
yeah.
Just
That would
doesn't
be
seem like it was
helpful if we had
recorded.
it.
I just have a random question. In our boilerplate orders, Travis, do we ask that these things are recorded nowadays?
For the RDAs.
For any permit conditions or any permits, do we ask in like kind of the just like the boilerplate general conditions that they are recorded prior to the start of work or prior to some timeline? Is that in our boilerplate language?
I'm pretty sure NOI condition, an order of conditions for an NOI have to be. I don't think an RDA does.
Okay.
Is there any more information anyone needs to develop a motion or decide how they would vote on a motion?
I mean, like Eric is saying that the original conditions would be really helpful in this situation, I think, because it is possible that some exist that would, you know, steer us towards a negative determination with conditions versus trying to rebuild the wheel.
Would it have any clout if it wasn't recorded? I don't know. I mean,
Another good question.
I don't think it's helpful in the sense that if we don't have it, if there's no record of it and it wasn't recorded and there were potentially ongoing conditions that were suggested that are not being followed anyway.
Yeah, well, I don't know if recording in the registry is sort of what gives it legal teeth versus maybe DEP has a stash or something. You know, I don't know what, from a legal perspective, which matters. But I mean, personally, I'm still sort of torn, I guess.
Well, I made a motion last time that wasn't seconded, so I can repeat the process and see if that's changed, or I can give some space for somebody else to make a motion, since last time I made one, it was left on the table.
Well, I'll
Not
just
really
remind
fine
everybody, I guess, that I
with
don't have a vote today, so yeah, there's that.
Travis, can you remind us again what our options are? So there's, thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, we could make a negative determination. Believe we could do a negative determination box 2 with conditions, which would be that it is within an area subject to protection, but will not alter the area, you know, if you do these conditions. Or a positive determination. There is a positive determination 7 about Riverfront area and notice of intent, but that one is like requesting specific alternatives, which if it's a restoration, the alternatives are not required. So I think it would just be positive determination box 3. Motion to make a positive determination that the work described on reference plans and documents is within an area subject to protection under the act and will remove, fill, or dredge or alter that area. Therefore, said work requires the filing of a notice of intent.
I think, and maybe someone can correct or offer a different perspective, but we're sort of just trying to figure out, since this does sort of fall under the redevelopment section, whether, you know, the work in total does, like clearly there's work happening in a resource area, but it's previously developed. So the question again is like, given all the current plans in front of us and potential conditions that we might set on it, are we confident that it wouldn't result in a degradation or all the things under section 40 of the area, you know, to sort of, I don't know, that's just the way I was thinking about it. But
yeah, I mean, this kind of gets to something I wanted to bring up about meetings going forward, that we should probably be specific and say which resource areas will be altered and you know, how will they be altered if we do say that they will be altered. So if it is a positive determination, if someone makes a motion for that, you know, we should probably be specific on what you know, what the alteration will be that we think would happen if the work as planned goes forward.
Jeff, did you get an elevation off the FEMA website for where the 100-year floodplain is?
You're muted.
Okay.
I had our surveyors check it, so, yeah, I mean, that would have been their data point, their data source. I can confirm. Confirm any of that.
I guess I am sort of concerned about the lack of us being able to follow up, but also the fact that it's already been developed. It doesn't seem like it necessarily falls under new, I mean, it's new work, but it's still in the same area that's already been developed.
Yeah, it's a redevelopment, and there's a whole different set of performance standards for redevelopment. So I hear you. I'm with you. I'm really torn on this. I'm with both of you guys, Fletcher and Erica. This is really tough. I'm really worried. I'm really uncomfortable with this because, I mean, what about enforcement, enforceability, accountability? If we have, 15 special conditions attached to our general conditions to a negative determination, I don't know, it just seems really weird to me. But I'm also really hesitant to issue a positive determination. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
this is
I
really
just,
weird.
just more context on that, for just my perspective on that is that, because we are kind of looking at the project as described and sort of the net impact versus what exists, will it be better or worse? I don't know that it would be necessarily, I guess what I'm saying is, like, when we're talking about like snow removal and that kind of thing, like, it's not necessarily or we'd want to tie it to this current project or this current modification. You know what I mean? If they've been not doing proper snow removal before this, that's not something we can really tie to this particular modification, unless we think that because there's going to be more parking lot area and because of X and Y features of the park or whatever, or like, then that would make sense because it's as a result of this current modification. But if some of the stuff we're talking about is sort of like pre-existing conditions that this project doesn't have a bearing on necessarily, then that might not be something we can really legitimately tie to this to a determination.
I'm just going to read something from the Wetlands Protection Act under the Riverfront area. The presumption, where a proposed activity involves work within the riverfront area, the issuing authority shall presume that the area is significant to protect the private or public water supply, to protect the groundwater, to provide flood control, to prevent storm damage, to prevent pollution, to protect land-containing shellfish, to protect wildlife habitat, and to protect fisheries. The presumption is rebuttable and may be overcome by a clear showing that the riverfront area does not play a role in the protection of one or more of these interests. In the event that the presumption is deemed to have been overcome as to the protection of all the interests, the issuing authority shall make a written determination to this effect, setting forth its grounds on Form 6, where the applicant provides information that the riverfront area at the site of activity does not play a role in the protection of an interest. The issuing authority may determine that the presumption for the interest has been rebutted and the presumption of significance is partially overcome.
See, that's where I feel I'm not unclear. I feel like there's no question that this resource area does have functions and values as is, and we're increasing our impervious surface area. And I'm not entirely clear how that's, I mean, in the outer 100 foot by 6,260 square feet, right? So, I mean, that's an impact in my mind to the riverfront area. And I don't know. I'm leaning towards a positive. I'm sorry. That's my feeling.
I'll just say I remain sort of torn in the middle here, but I think potentially with some of the attached conditions, even if it were negative, you could potentially offset some of your concern. Not saying personally what you would think, but for me, if impervious area is slightly increased, and but also like this other some area where their sheet flow is like reduced and the trash is reduced or something, that to me is all factored into whether it's going to have a net negative impact over the current conditions, I guess. But I don't know how legitimate that is given the project areas over here and some of the stuff we're talking about is away from there, but I think it's still legitimate. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I don't know if I think there are some good reasons as far as like continuing enforcement and stuff, but I don't know that yeah, I mean there's potential things to offset an increase like you're talking about, I think, just from my perspective. But not, I mean, those would be there with a notice of intent as well, so.
I know Jeff said he's seen several projects that had lots of conditions attached. Has anybody else, like Mitch, have you seen anything like this where, and how well are those conditions be able to, met and followed and stuff? Like, can we actually make this, how tight can we make it?
I'm not sure.
Jeff, do you have any thoughts on that as far as experience in the past with clients, sort of, as time between the determination and the project grows,
Yeah.
people being more or less motivated to actually comply with something that doesn't have the teeth that a NOI has?
Sure. No, it's certainly a valid question and concern. I think, the projects that I've had conditional approval on RDAs, varied a little bit. To some extent, they are a little bit project specific. So if there were particular concerns that were, ongoing, then, the commissions have been, a lot more diligent about following up on, what happens with those in years to come, and may require, reporting forms or something. Others have been, a little less stringent or a little more vague in instances where, the commission members weren't overly concerned about a particular issue, and, it was more to make the statement and make the applicant aware than anything. But there's certainly a lot of others that, have referenced ongoing conditions and orders of condition or other follow-up requirements. So I guess it varies a little bit.
Yeah, and your Berkshire design would be sort of, do you guys follow up at all post-construction, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, particularly with a certificate of compliance, we would often have to provide some certification.
Sure.
We could certainly provide something here. I imagine we will need to anyway, as part of the planning board process and, building process, for the addition. As far as salt removal or use of salts or some of those other things, that's usually up to the owner or, property owner to implement those and provide, whatever evidence of maintenance that they need to provide. And we may do those inspections, but we don't always have to. It can be somebody else too.
I guess one other thought there was one thing that was kept I'm thinking, is whether it's worth going through all the extra work for the NOI to attach the conditions, where if we can attach them to the RDA, because we have lots of other NOIs that have conditions attached to them. How often are we checking to make sure they're all being followed in perpetuity? I'm not saying that it shouldn't be, but I'm just saying, can we kind of accomplish the same thing with additions to the RDA?
Travis, did you mention earlier that with an RDA we can't issue an enforcement order? Did I imagine that or mishear that?
I didn't say anything in those exact words. What I read earlier was saying that, hold on, I'll find it for you.
I thought it was that if we don't agree with the way things are progressing, then we can actually come back and say, no, now we want to have an NOI because it's not progressing the way we had thought it was going to be, or we were told it was going to.
That's what I got from that Mac snippet for sure. Which, again, part of that's on us, to follow up in a timely manner to where we get to see something like that, and maybe that can be part of the RDA in the case of an RDA situation where we actually set inspection or something. I don't know if that's true or not, but yeah, I just worry if I just wish it was more clear in that statement how exactly you sort of claw back that permission you give, you know what I mean, to then initiate the NOI. But if it's in there, I'm somewhat comfortable with it because Mac is a lot of consolidated experience. So. But again, that would be up to us to do the diligence of following up in time to actually trigger that NOI if things weren't being fulfilled as expected. Erica said.
I think the trigger would be if we discover that a resource area has been altered, we can make someone submit an NOI.
I see.
I mean, I think that's whether someone was doing an RDA or
Right.
not.
Independent of this project, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And for what it's worth, in my experience, any impact to a resource area, whether it was a notice of intent or an RDA, certainly entitles you guys to file an enforcement order on any project and on any instance. So it's irregardless of what other permits have been obtained or not. That you're fully within your right to issue an enforcement order
Right,
if they're
but
not following.
I meant, I guess, in terms of non-compliance with ongoing conditions, if it was a negative determination, I guess is what I was thinking.
What are our Like, what's the clout for ongoing conditions once a certificate of compliance is issued? Regardless, like if we had a condition that said, don't dump landscape mulch on the far side of the curb along the parking lot as an ongoing condition and issued a certificate of compliance and then discovered 3 years later that they were putting mulch on that, like there's already been a certificate of compliance issued.
You can put in conditions in perpetuity in COCs.
Right. Well, the compliance, as I think Travis just read off the fact that you can include conditions beyond the compliance in the certificate of compliance.
I know that you can do that, but if somebody isn't following it, there's nothing to do. You could issue an enforcement order for putting mulch in a place where there's a COC with ongoing conditions that says that you're not supposed to put mulch. There's no ramification, like there's no clout. It's see the difference in terms of ongoing conditions. I agree with Erica that they're important. I feel like they have a huge impact on the property, but there's an awful lot of good faith that goes into ongoing conditions, regardless of whether it's an NOI or not, because we have nothing to be able to hold them like accountable for those ongoing conditions other than a piece of paper and like pointing a finger or asking them to come to a meeting. Like I don't see how that's different.
I think it's only different in the case of going to like court or something and specifically arguing about those conditions rather than just like if it is a degradation of the resource area, just again starting like a new process. But if it's not, then yeah, no, I take your point, and I think it's kind of similar to Erica's point of technically some of these options seems very different, but in practice, it's not quite as clear.
I guess the only thing I would add is not that we're in the business of issuing enforcement orders all the time, but I mean I think that would be the option if if there was a violation of an ongoing condition and I don't know, it's kind of interesting in the handbook it says that enforcement orders can be issued. Oh, it says including but not limited to work without an order of conditions, violations of an order of conditions, damaging a resource area, or it doesn't say anything about an RDA, issuing an enforcement order for an RDA violation.
I think it would just be if the difference being like if the the violation we observed was again a negative impact on a resource area, then it doesn't really matter. But if it's just breaking of a condition that we set that we think is going to be very clearly beneficial to the resource, but in itself isn't necessarily by them not complying isn't necessarily a violation, then it's not, the course of action isn't as clear. But again, that's not necessarily practical in this situation. Is it worth discussing conditions that we're all thinking of, or is it worth motioning to see where each voting commissioner is at.
That was
Or-
kind of what I was thinking was, in all respect to Kristen, because I definitely agree with some of the things that you have. I guess I was thinking I would probably be comfortable with a negative determination if we were sure that we were going to be able to, you know, get the things that we want to be followed, you know. So I don't know. So yeah, should we discuss those things first, or, you know? No.
I don't think there were all that many so far.
I think if our conditions that we have that are ongoing, um, if each of those ongoing conditions is something that, if it was violated, whether it was a condition or not, um, uh, it would be against the Wetlands Protection Act, you know, like uh, altering a resource area or something, then it's sort of like a reminder. It's like, hey, there are all these ongoing things that you shouldn't do, because if you do them, you might be altering a resource area, and then, you know, that's a violation of the Wetlands Protection Act. That kind of gets back to what we were saying about, I think, what Fletcher was saying earlier.
I mean, as far as like do I personally think this is a net negative impact versus positive? With some of the conditions we talked about, I feel like it could be positive. Although, I mean, anytime you erect a giant structure, I just think there's intangibles that would change what I'm saying. But that's not the kind of world we live in. So, like, I think given like some of the plans, given the plans that Jeff presented and some of the conditions we talked about, I would be comfortable saying that I think this could potentially be neutral or improved. Yeah, I'd be comfortable saying that, but again, I could see it either way.
And I guess I would just add that one thing that would be easy to do as conditions would be pre-construction conditions. Like if we wanted native plantings where the invasive species were removed, and then they have to like submit to us, we have to approve the list of what was going to be planted. You know, those things would definitely be easy compared to these ongoing, more vague conditions, maybe.
I will just say that sweet spire is not in the mass vascular plant list, the county checklist. So I don't think that's native in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I think I looked that up, and the range, the northernmost range is like Pennsylvania, I think, the native range. So
I like the
that could
dogwood
be,
though.
yeah, so
I
that
usually
could
go by
be,
Bonap, and that's what they show as the range. Pennsylvania, New Jersey.
so that could be a condition where we need to approve the list prior to construction.
Well, if there's four of us voting, then three of us need to be able to decide one way or the other. Or have a majority. I think the most impactful conditions in this particular project are probably the kind of conditions that we can make as pre-construction conditions, and really impact the construction of it. I think we can, and I don't have a problem with including some of those good faith ongoing conditions, with the understanding that that they'll be as enforceable as I feel like they are after a certificate of compliance is issued. So I would stick with my my feeling from last time that I think that we would be able to accomplish the most impactful part of what we can accomplish with a negative determination with conditions.
How
I
many-
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, just going back to the planting plan. How many trees again are we planting? The Betula, Niagara? Oh, I'm on the old one. There's a revised plan set. Um, 6.
6 of the birch, yeah.
How many trees are being removed, Jeff?
I think there are a couple of small landscape trees out in front of the, that end of the parking lot now. That's really about it. I think that, there's a hedgerow that separates the two properties right now that's coming down. I don't think there's no really substantial trees, anything that's, any of the trees that I am aware of are in that sort of that grass strip between the existing parking lot and Shelburne Road.
Would you consider swapping out Sweet Spire for something that had more wildlife habitat value, like a berry producing shrub
Sure.
that's maybe viburnum, or something
Yep.
that's ornamental that your applicant would like to have that's also native and also with wildlife habitat value?
Sure. Yep. I have no problem swapping those out.
In the same number, 15 or more?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
we
cool.
probably try to keep the quantities the same. Yeah.
All right. And Rachel, how do you feel about the river birch?
I mind the river birch. The thought that I had that I think would really improve the planting plan would be the addition of some full-size shade trees and where the invasive species are being removed. I think the shade value for the stream and the parking lot there, the asphalt is really high, and that's where there were obviously large trees that were recently removed.
Mhm.
So I think that dense shade is one of the better ways of controlling invasive species over the long run. So I think if there's full-size native shade trees that could be, I was trying to gauge it out, like 3 might be able to fit in that space. Fairly dense packed, but that would actually potentially be able to provide a impactful amount of shade to that area.
I will also say that will also mitigate thermal loading from the impervious surface area. So that will kind of go to your
Exactly.
performance standards. And I think that would be better than the river birch, which don't grow very tall and they're kind of not really that native. I mean, they're technically native, but they're sort of a landscaping tree. So I don't know. Silver
Yeah.
maple? Is that too big?
I'm certainly willing to, put some more tree. We could certainly add some trees in the area that, you just mentioned where the invasives are coming out. I think, the concern with some of the islands where the river birches are is primarily right around the building and around, the parking lot. So trying to find trees that, don't create a mess, that can tolerate that sort of condition, that provides some ornamental value, that plant list gets pretty short pretty quickly.
I see your point there. Yeah, I really
You
do.
have to kind of stick to a street tree, like a street tree list. Like where the overlap is, where's the Venn overlap between native trees and street trees?
Yep. But certainly, I don't disagree with any of your comments about that invasive area. That we could certainly, 3 trees over there, 4 trees over there. There's a host of silver maple would certainly work there. We could, plane trees would work. Number of trees would work over there, I think.
So that's in addition to your plant list. So like this plant list was for kind of your landscaping. So
those would be in addition, right?
okay, gotcha. All right.
Yep.
I want to point out there are a couple existing sort of like coppice trees, bunches of trees. I guess they're right beside the invasive patch, but yeah, just wanted to point that out in case that changes anything as far as what you can fit there.
Yeah, I think there should be enough room over there to be able to fit what we need.
I need to use the restroom. I'll be right back.
There be any issues to the other commissioners with us providing or as a condition? I'm just trying to understand
So
if,
you didn't miss anything. He just started talking.
if you can call it that. I'm just trying to figure out if like we have to pin down each of these details for the conditions now, or if it could say something like, you know, condition would be that client would implement plantings given a agreed upon amended list with the from the commission, and if Jeff is comfortable with that or not, just to figure out how much legwork should be done right now versus.
Yeah, I think we could just say, you know, that we need to approve the plan before planting happens. I think right now, if we're telling him these are things we would not approve, that's probably helpful, but we probably don't have to specify every single plant right now.
Yeah, the approval thing makes more sense.
I guess I just want to add that I think I am also leaning towards a negative determination. So I think we probably have at least 3 of us who would vote for a negative determination if someone wants to make a motion with the specified conditions.
Should we
Remake
explicit? Oh.
Sorry, go ahead, Fletcher.
No, I just didn't know if we wanted to get explicit about those conditions once more in a list before, just to make the motion as clean as possible. That might just be for me, so I don't know.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just mention what I was writing down. You know, we have the plan as it is, which includes invasive removal already. So I think if we're just approving the plan, we don't specifically have to say invasive removal, but we could. So the invasive removal on that area on the near this next to the stream on the property, that we would need to approve a planting plan prior to planting beginning, including all native, well, we could say all plants native to Massachusetts or native to the area. The addition of native trees in the invasive removal area. I'm not sure what those are the things we were talking about recently. I'm not sure what else we want to specify.
We want to have notice sent to the, I don't know what we normally do for invasive species management. Does the commission normally request written notice before it takes place and then some sort of written summary by December 31st in the year it takes place? Or how does this commission normally deal with invasive species management for open permits?
In my recollection, it's mostly been a mechanical, like specify mechanical removal with no herbicide and no soil disturbance for a specified amount of time and without like notice ahead of time or anything. It's just been wrapped into like site inspections. I think that's been the majority of the projects that I can remember recently, but that doesn't mean it has to be that way.
That sounds, yeah, that's what I would think too.
We can also lump that together with a planting plan and request to approve a planting plan and invasive species methods removal plan.
I think that would be a good idea. Just
We can,
yeah, particularly like, you know, just some delineation of the area to be treated and planted, more so than just, you know, the general area on a map would be good. So there's no surprises for either of us. Um, yeah.
Are there any other conditions anyone feels would be important to include?
I don't know the best way to phrase it, but just something that generally said applicant will agree to not to dump or not to landscape past the curb or something. Past the
No additional
Curb.
landscaping materials outside, like downstream or down bank of the curb. I mean, you could,
Be on top of bank?
yeah.
well, I mean that area where they're dumping stuff right now is just it's just slightly past the curb, sort of before the fence. So
It's not beyond where they're putting the material isn't beyond to the top of the bank, I don't think. It's just,
no.
that's where it's washing.
Yeah.
What about, I mean, it seems like it's moving off their property.
Could we say something
into-
like the landowner will not intentionally place landscaping material into jurisdictional resource areas, and if it's susceptible to erosion, I don't know, something like along the lines of will not, put landscaping material directly into resource areas. If it's sloping right into the resource area and they're putting it right at the top of the bank, it's going to go in the resource area. I don't know. Is there some way we can word that?
Yeah, I mean the area is not contained. It's not. Yeah, there's no containment for the area that they're landscaping in the specific place that in the pictures I was looking at. So maybe the applicant will not apply landscaping materials to uncontained areas where they might where they'll wash into the resource area along the stream side of their property or past the curb.
Sorry to change it once again, but what about the, just that the applicant will prevent uh, 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 landscaping mulch from
Eroding?
yeah, leaving their property and entering the vegetated wetland buffer.
Migrating down slope?
I love the sentiment of it, but as if I were the applicant, I would be hesitant to sign on just because, like, again, landscapers do their own thing and storms do their own thing. So I wish we could, we could say that and have everybody agree. But
Jeff, do you have any ideas on what you think would be doable for your client?
For that particular section of fence or
For the mulch that's leaving their property into the wetland buffer riverfront area.
Yeah, I mean, imagine it's just mulch to try and cover up the compacted gravel or whatever the material is there to try and make it look better. Yeah. I mean, short of preventing them or prohibiting them from putting anything over there. Yeah, I'm not sure I have a better suggestion.
I mean, maybe that's the answer is now I'm just picturing them like sort of changing the sod to some landscaping material on the most southern portion, and it not being caught by air conditioning. But yeah, what I was going to say is maybe we could just target that area at this point and say, in the, what is that, the northeast or something of the parking lot, where there's no containment on landscaping materials, the applicant will either contain or cease to drop materials there that migrate into the stream.
I like that. I like that. The applicant will make efforts to contain migrate soils and landscaping materials that are migrating into resource areas currently in the future or something. I like that.
I can't think of any others, but I would love to see, just from this conversation, that not necessarily as a condition, but to see what their management is for snow and stuff, maybe as just a voluntary work together type effort. So maybe that's something we could get
Sure.
a copy of, their sort of landscaping / snow management plans.
Sure.
Nice.
I didn't know this before, but I did find out that Mass DEP has a snow disposal guidance for municipalities and businesses. So if you really wanted it to be technical, it could be, must follow Mass DEP guidance, which doesn't necessarily mean that we would have to like approve where it goes. It just has like, I was just looking through it really quick and it just says like, oh, try to put it, somewhere, don't put it in a wetland, like put it up away from resource areas, and don't cover storm drains because that can lead to flooding. And it's just kind of like general guidance, stuff like that.
Yep.
It might make more of an impact instead of requesting to see a plan to just say like no bulk storage removal within the interior 100-foot buffer, because they're going to have a whole other parking lot on the north. It's going to be way farther away from the building. What Jeff is saying is that like if generally the strategy is to stockpile snow in the farthest corner, that's going to be the farthest corner. And so if we just said no snow stockpiling within the interior 100-foot, that would prevent any stockpiling from happening on the riverbank side of the curb, which I think is the objective. Like you just don't want snow being pushed where it could gather oils and sediments and being pushed over the curb onto the grass where it would then melt directly into the river stream. So
And salt.
Just and
Yep.
salt, yeah. Whatever they're putting on there and whatever dripping out of cars that are parked there. So by saying stockpiling outside of the interior 100-foot, we're relieving that whole problem.
And yeah,
Because all of the water outside of the 100-foot, well, most of it anyway, looks like it would go into the new stormwater chambers, which have to meet those TSS and requirements, the TSS standards.
yeah, I love that. I was making probably a false assumption that there'd be a lot of pushback, but if that's possible, I think that's great. And maybe even tack on and generally follow the Mass DEP recommendations for management of snow and whatever.
Which from what I saw, that is like part of their guidance
main-
is like put it as far away from, like put it in more upland areas.
I mean, for all we know, I mean, anybody, but this site or anybody could just be, when it gets too full, they just dump it into the stream. So maybe this would be a good reminder not to do that,
About the general untidiness, I'm not sure really how much jurisdiction we have over garbage.
It's a good reminder about the garbage receptacle.
I don't remember now on your list, Travis, where we are, but the two concrete things that I had on my list after visiting were the establishment of a garbage can by the picnic table or somewhere in that area, and the 3 to 4 shade trees that we talked about. So those would be the two things on add to that list.
Okay, I'll read the list that I have right now. So prior approval for invasive plant removal plan, prior approval for a native planting plan, the addition of 3 to 4 native trees in the invasive removal area, containing soils or landscaping material migrating to resource areas or cease application. Stockpiling snow outside the 100-foot riverfront area, which I guess that's kind of weird to say. And the 100 feet of the riverfront area nearest to the stream, and generally follow DEP snow disposal guidance, and establish a garbage receptacle near the picnic table. We could specify to prevent litter from entering resource areas.
I assume, common sense means that they'll monitor that, like empty it, not just put it there and leave it there.
Yeah.
Maybe we should make it more specific
Maintained.
to,
Maintain. Yeah, maintain is good.
manage the trash in the resource areas, big.
Yeah, maybe just that general in the resource area, and then also add a receptacle, because there was actually a abandoned battery there when I was there, car battery.
Well,
Ooh,
So
Well, and some of that area is like outside of their property, and like it's kind of hard to say like, oh, go on state property over there. When
this was near one of the parked cars. I mean, it may be. I'm not sure if
Mm.
it was right in the resource area, but it was definitely on their property. But yeah. Anyway, maybe just in general, just maintain the garbage and stuff.
All right, any other conditions?
I don't have a specific in mind, but do we want to indicate some type of agreement to a follow-up inspection, or do we just want to take it upon ourselves to make sure we make that happen?
Well, I
If it's
mean,
appropriate for a condition, or
yeah, I mean, we have the authority to inspect it while they're doing that.
yeah, I just didn't
Anyway.
know if we wanted to make it like a meetup between the client and the commission versus us just going and
I don't know.
to get to know people.
Yeah, I guess I don't feel like I would need that.
Fair enough.
I don't know how anyone else feels. Rachel, do you want to make your motion again with the conditions we just
I will
listed?
remake my motion for a negative determination with conditions. Box 3.
I'll second that.
Was it box 2 in this case?
The page that I have in front of me has negative determination box 3 as the one with conditions.
Yeah, but Travis read something earlier that stated that you can do that with box 2 as well, I think, Travis. And box 2 calls out resource area.
Yeah, in the handbook, it did say that special conditions could be attached to either box 2 or box 3. I'm looking at the same page
So I
you are,
guess it would be
Rachel.
box 2 because it's within a resource, an area subject to protection under the act
Right.
Yeah, because it's in the riverfront area.
with conditions.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion for negative determination that was seconded with the conditions previously stated. Any further discussion on that motion? Okay, hearing no discussion. Everyone opposed to the negative determination?
I'm not opposed to it. I will vote in favor. I am a little concerned about the BLSF though. I'm very curious about that elevation. I'm going to look into that. But I think that you probably think this was painful, Jeff, but I don't know if it's more painful or less painful than an NOI process. We're very thorough. But I feel
We're
like this
also
was
also learning.
a good discussion.
Okay, and anyone abstaining, which would be Fletcher. All right, then the motion passes, 4 votes, 1 abstaining for negative determination with the conditions as we discussed.
Perfect.
All right, thanks for
Thank you very much, everyone.
sticking through with us.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Yeah.
Appreciate the conversation. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
Thank you. And
All right.
you all have a good night.
You too.
Okay.
Good night.
So many tabs open now. I gotta find the agenda again. Okay, so next on the agenda, you guys might notice that the agenda is a little different than usual because I noticed in Greenfield's bylaws, I think it specifies the exact order that our agenda for the Conservation Commission should be in. And it specifically says that other business should be before enforcement updates. So I had Mitch make that change. And also it specifies a spot for correspondence between project monitoring and site visit scheduling. So if anyone like writes us a letter, anything, we can mention it in that section. So the agenda has been changed to conform with Greenfield's bylaws. They require that change, I guess. So next on the agenda is other business. We already discussed Stone Ridge Lane with the mayor. Next would be the commission will discuss the details of the conservation land trail mapping project. And I'll just add that I sent Mitch an email just letting him know like where the files were for what had been done previously. And Mitch, I don't know if you want to talk about what you've learned on there.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, I just looked over what's been done previously. Looks pretty simple. Looks like I could just keep going with that the way it's been done. I could add to it. I could do some GPS trail mapping and the other things that Travis, you mentioned. I'm mostly just waiting for, they're going to put Arc Pro under my computer, supposedly soon. So I'm waiting for that. But yeah, I just wanted to see your thoughts on your vision for this project. If anyone had anything.
Anyone like to?
Yeah. Well, I just plenty of us hike the trails. So like I'm not totally clear on what exists and what doesn't for GPS. So Mitch, if you had as you're going through it, you're like, oh, there's a lot and whatever. I'm saying I personally would be open to potentially providing some GPS tracks, but my main point is just I don't know what's missing exactly, and that would be good to know.
Okay.
And then also,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. Well, no, I just was going to say, like, from a vision standpoint, I just think right now it's split up into a couple locations, I think, between the rec department and the conscom, maybe, as far as where you can access trail maps. And my ideally, and this is just me, I would kind of like to see like like an interactive map as like the sole source potentially, unless there's some download links elsewhere where like you can see the Greenfield with like just the parcels that have conservation areas, and then click on those and then see a few details and be directed to the map download or whatever. But you know, I understand there's technological limitations depending on how detailed we want to get with that, and that's also just like very final. Obviously, having just new updated maps for the areas is goal number one. But as far you asked about the vision, so I just think it'd be nice if there was like sort of a dedicated spot, even if it's on the rec department website or posted on our, not that we really have a website, but our page, whichever way it goes, or links on both. That's just personally what I think would be most, make it most accessible to the public, maybe.
Okay, that's a little outside of what I've done previously, but I can definitely look into trying.
Well, I've actually gone through that process a couple times, so I'm happy
Okay.
to help you. If you look at like Mount Grace's interactive map, it's pretty similar to what I'm talking about, but on just a sort of a wider scale. But you know, it may not be appropriate. I'm interested to hear what the other commissioners think about. Like that might be sort of overkill or whatever. But yeah, if that was feasible, then I think that might be good.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think like just having like a PDF map for each property that has trails on it is probably going to be a huge step in the right direction. And
All right.
that sounds like to me like a like a Kickstarter stretch goal. Like that's the extra stuff that like
Love it.
once we get everything else done, if Mitch needs something to do, that
Totally.
that could be an extra step. But yeah, I mean, I just I think I don't know if you've seen there were like hand-drawn maps for most of the properties that had trails. Mitch, I don't know if you've seen those
Yeah, I've
in the
seen some
old
of those.
files. Yeah, so I mean, I think just having something that's updated with, um, that shows, like where a trailhead, or, like where you can access the site from. And we're probably going to have to, like tweak things as we go along, as somebody who has made trail maps in the past. And um I mean, I have some like ideas for like specific things. Like I think it's good to have like mileages between intersections of trails, and like some sort of elevation indicator, whether it's contour lines or what. um And I know we had taken some like GPS tracks in the past, and I think that data needs to be like cleaned up a bit and like smoothed out, and because GPS data is very jerky, and so that's something that can happen. Um, and what was the other thing? Yeah, and like I said, I've right after college, I was an intern at a national park, and I was making updates to trail maps there. So, uh, if you need any advice on technical stuff, let me know. And I think Fletcher does a lot of, or has or does a lot of GIS stuff as well.
Yep. Yeah, I'm happy to get feedback there. I will say, just from thinking about this from Mitch's perspective, maybe do we want to like send them comments on the existing format or send formats that we like? Or like, I just don't know, do we have direction for them on, or just have them be creative and
I could just get
Shenanigans.
started and then send you guys some
Yeah.
drafts. You guys can give feedback.
cool.
Yeah, and just to remind everybody, like I think we're gonna have to give them feedback in a meeting. Well, I guess if we individually give them feedback without any of us talking to each other for open meeting law,
That just means it's public record. In that case, I think
yeah.
it was sort of I went to like the Mac, like the liability workshop or something, and it was like, can you discuss this, and this, like outside? Like you can, but it's public record.
Hmm.
Obviously, if it's like a hearing or something, it's different.
Yeah.
Not suggesting we do that.
But we probably shouldn't. I mean, from my understanding is that we're not allowed to deliberate outside of a meeting, which would be a quorum of us discussing things under our purview, or I think the language is something like that. And like managing conservation land is like definitely something under our purview. And so I think if we did like a reply all and we were all seeing each other's comments, I don't think that would be good. I think that would be like a serial communication of something under, because it doesn't just apply to like permitting stuff. It's like anything that we're in charge of doing that the public may want to have input on. You know, the public may want to talk about like what our trail maps look like and the process of creating them. So I don't think we can do that like
Like,
totally outside of a
present
meeting.
a final kind of public comment.
Right. I was
I
gonna
mean,
say
like,
the same.
yeah, for like the nuts and bolts bits. I don't know if that needs to be all.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like if we reply to Mitch, but not to each other, it's not a problem as long as a quorum of us aren't in on the discussion together or
Gotcha.
sharing information between each other.
So no reply all if we're
If
commenting
you just replied
on
straight to
spatial
him,
data. Okay.
yes, I think.
Gotcha.
I mean, we might as well be like, as much to the letter and spirit of the law as we think we can.
That's what Maureen was really good about reminding everyone to do that all the time when she was agent.
Hmm.
So if it's like a, hey, I added these photographs to the drive, reply all, please.
Yeah.
You know, if you're notifying, if you're giving notification or it's around meeting organization and like file organization, if it's information sharing, reply all. If it has anything to do with like substantive comments or opinions, just reply to the agent. And or you could reply to the agent and like the chair, but no more than that if you felt like it was important for someone on the commission to get your communication. But generally, Maureen said, just reply to her, and she'll
Disseminate.
gets everybody's feedback and then presents it at the meeting. Next meeting.
Could you do that, Mitch, for us, since I may forget that?
Just do a quick reminder when I send
Yeah,
out an
when
email.
it's
Yeah, sure.
when it's good to reply all and when it's good to just reply to you, especially for this topic that we're discussing right now, in case I should forget.
Yeah, will do.
Thank you.
Is there any other like specific guidance anyone
mean,
has on?
Definitely prefer north up.
Mhm.
Oh, one thing that we talked.
know.
Yeah, one thing that we talked about in the past was whether to show trails going on to other properties or not, and how like if a trail leaves our property and goes on to private property, are we going to show that on the map? Because then is it like us telling people, hey, go onto this private property?
Probably not in like the significance of other trails, unless we have like some easement or agreement with the owner, but personally, and I could totally see pushback against this. I kind of irritates me when they just show like main legal trails or something, or I'm sorry, not legal, but main trails, sort of sanctioned trails. And then there are other sort of very clear trails that aren't on maps, and it can get a little confusing. So I would just advocate for maybe like a very subtle indication if it's a significant trail, but we don't want to put it in like our main trails. But I'm totally ready for dissent on that.
Well, and I think, I mean, to me, I think it makes sense showing like where trails connect. And like we could indicate what is private property and what's not private property, and we could have a note
Yep.
saying like, you know, you need the private landowner's permission. I mean, the other complication is that it could be, oh, what is that? Chapter
97 or Article 97?
Article 90.
Or 61B or
No,
something.
chapter 61. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking. Where like
the open
you can
space one?
allow, yeah, you can allow the public onto your land as like an open space thing.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you get
And
like, 1,000
technically
square foot.
technically if it's not posted, you're allowed on the land in theory. But yeah, we could definitely include some clear guidance that, you know, this right here is private land and you shouldn't use that if it's posted or something. You know, we can make it clear one way or the other.
Yeah. And I guess another thing, Mitch, is that it's also a little complicated because some of our conservation lands have city-owned land right next to them, like the Canada Hill property has like 2 parcels of city-owned land next to it that the trail continues on. So, but it's not conservation land, and you have to like look at who owns the property to figure out. I think the Mass DEP open space ownership layer says that it's like municipally owned. So I think you can figure it out that way. But there we wouldn't have any problem saying, you know, you can continue on this land that's connected because it's owned by the city.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, my cat's making horrible noises behind me, scratching a cardboard box. Yeah, and I think if we just have like a nice, you know, like a nice clean template to just use for all of our properties and have sort of like a, you know, a look to them, that I think we could have some pretty nice maps.
It'd be nice
I think
if they don't look the same, so that when somebody was looking, they didn't have to always be looking to try and figure out what it was saying. You know, so
Yeah, like the Highland Park map. What? It's backwards. I like what Fletcher was saying, with the north arrow facing north. It's a place to start.
Seen a few kind of edge cases where it's shaped so strangely that you almost like can't do that, but if possible, you know.
Okay, well, thank you. I think that's enough to go on for now.
Yeah, and I guess one other thing I would add is that I only know of this in one place, like near the swimming area, but there are a couple different properties there that are, I think there are 2 conservation lands like right next to each other. So that could be like a combined, you know, I don't think we would have to have one map for each of those properties. It could just be like combined. That's
Right.
pretty obvious, but I just thought I would mention it. Okay. Any other comments? I would ask if there were any public comments, but there's no one from the public here, so. Okay, next on the agenda was another thing I asked Mitch to add because I saw on another Conservation Commission's agenda, which is just any topics not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance of posting this agenda. That way, if something comes up that's important, you know, we could at least briefly mention it, but we're probably not gonna, like make any motions related to it until the next meeting after we posted it on an agenda.
I have something.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Rachel. So I got a notice from AMWS that the governor extended the remote meetings through July 15th. So
We have a little more time.
Rachel, were you gonna?
Request, can we add for the next meeting? I have to discuss right now. I guess not really. Anyway, besides the trail mapping, the trail maintenance at Griswold back to the agenda, because I think we had kind of tabled that until we had an agent to help us figure out if that work needed to be put out to bid or sort of the procedures and payment structure for doing the trail maintenance at Griswold that we had talked about. So maybe we can put that on for next time.
Sure.
Yeah, and I guess we can keep that on our agenda at least, like at least through our site visit, just so that if we have more things, probably the one after that too, at least. And I don't know, Mitch, were you around when we set up a site visit at Griswold? I think that might have been before you started.
Might have been, yeah.
That is on April 2nd at 9:30 a.m. At Griswold GTD Conservation Land. You don't have to go to that, but just so you know, we'll be out there.
That'd be great. Let's go.
Yeah, if you want to go.
Well, I do have to comment that we made that quite a while ago, and I wasn't quite sure of my work schedule, and I may have my work is very weather driven, so that it may not. They may. I think they were planning to do a program that day. But I'll have to see.
Okay. I think as long as some of us can be there, we'll probably. I think it's hard to get all of us somewhere sometimes.
You should actually confirm that with Lincoln.
Yeah.
Closer to the date, or I guess now is probably as good a time. Because we did make that a long time ago. So.
Mm-hmm. I can just email him real quick, since I was emailing him before. Okay. Any other last minute things that came up after the agenda was posted?
No, I just wanted to share my experience with being sworn in again, and just for commissioners that haven't come up against it yet, there's needs to be a city council vote to reappoint you, but then there's a 35-day waiting period as well. So in this case, I sort of followed up thinking I would just go in and get sworn in. They had the wrong contact info for me, so they were trying to like give me a heads up about the city council vote, but they didn't get in touch with me until like much later. So my point is just for people who have terms coming up that are set to be renewed, you kind of have to allow for the city council vote date, but also the 35-day waiting period after the vote.
Did your sorry, I don't know what my question is. I feel like I had been reappointed in the past and I didn't have to get sworn in again.
Well, that's what I was reappointed and I had to get sworn in again, but I don't remember the whole 35-day period and that. I mean, the first time, yes, but I don't.
Weird. Then I
was
don't know.
stuff mixed up because of COVID? Because
Well, then maybe I'm giving wrong information then, because I thought I just had to go get sworn in, but I was told by the mayor's assistant that it needed to be voted on by city council, and then there was a 35-day waiting period, and that's what I'm stuck in right now. So, I mean, I guess just the lesson is just double check because I wasn't aware of that, or maybe I was unknowingly put on questionable for reappointment list and they had to do it, but who knows?
I had the same thing happen to me. I think I've had re-sworn in. The other thing that's interesting is that when you join the commission, you pick up somebody else's slot. So it's not a 3 years from when you join. So I had to get re-sworn in a year after I joined because the person whose slot I filled expired a year after I joined. So it doesn't start over. And the agendas used to have, with our names in the top right-hand corner, it used to have just a month of your term ending. And that was really helpful because then you had like a constant reminder of being like, even though I joined the commission in like, I don't know, I forget, it was like June 2016 or something. My term expired June 2017 and I saw at the top of the agenda.
Now it's just a year, right?
Maybe there's a way of just integrating that again so that we see the dates that our own terms are expiring, and don't have to rely on City Hall getting in touch with us in order for then us to know the process and deal with the 35-week period. The same thing happened to me last time when my term expired. I missed the deadline for city council, and then I had to abstain from voting for a couple commission meetings before I could get myself back in again. So
it does show
Heads
that
up.
it does show the month and year on our webpage, but
That's what I'm looking at. Yeah.
yeah, I guess Mitch, if you could just add those beside our names on the agenda, that might help us.
Yeah.
Sure, I can do that.
We'll just have to remember to update when our terms are renewed. Well, I guess I probably did get sworn in again. It's hard, I'm on the community preservation committee too, so I was like, I got sworn in for that. And maybe it's hard to remember your swearings in. But I don't remember a 35-day wait period like that. I guess what I was wondering, my first question I was going to ask is like, did your term like lapse? Like you didn't get renewed before the end of your term, and that's why it had to be the 35?
I think that makes more
Oh.
sense. Although Rachel said that she also had to do it, so that's confusing. But that does make sense because they were emailing my incorrect work email address until like, I don't know, the mayor's assistant asked like someone and got an updated thing, but it was like a day before the city council vote or something. So it's very possible that in that miscommunication period that I lapsed, and then yeah, so maybe that's it.
And it was like a new appointment, basically.
Right. I'll follow up with Caitlin and see. I'm not sure.
Okay.
So are you dysionic?
Oh yeah, unfortunately I have probably multiple emails in there, but
You're not
I would try to keep
censored.
my personal professional things separate, and then you respond from another address and people get that address. So I'm terrible at that. But yeah, I usually go fharrington816@gmail for official stuff.
Okay.
Gmail doesn't let you delegate without it saying this is from this other address too. So I kind of got
So
busy about it.
do we have your current, so in the Concom meeting agenda from that Mitch sent us from 3/8, is that your current, is that the email address you want? Because I feel like I've seen a couple from you and I never know what one to send when I'm replying to all. So,
I'm sorry, the last email that Mitch sent to me?
yeah, Dasonic,
Yeah, I mean, that's,
is that the one you
I
want?
guess really what determined it was like when we were sharing our drive stuff, or when we were getting access to the drive, that's the address that I was given access on, so we can just stick with that. Yeah, that works.
Okay.
All right. There's nothing else for that item. Gotta go back to the agenda here. Mitch, do you know, are there any enforcement updates at this
No,
time?
not yet. Nothing.
Okay, and so project monitoring, list of active order of conditions and updates. Any updates on any of those?
No.
Okay. And there are no correspondences, site visit scheduling. All right, we could be out of here by 9:30.
Well, I think we may have had a reporter from the recorder in our meeting tonight, so check the paper.
Mhm.
That was, that, I'm wondering who that was.
What was the situation last time? They were trying to, oh, they were here for the mayor's thing. Okay, that's right. So maybe that'll be
put-
the next.
Yeah, it was just a very, she wrote an article on our last meeting, and I put it in the 184 Shelburne folder for the last meeting, but it was very non-opiniony, just straightforward. This is an applicant, this is the plan, these
Mhm.
commissioners said these things. It was continued. Very
And
bland.
she actually called me to clarify what a negative and positive determination was. So I clarified that.
She wrote it very clearly, and I figured somebody must have actually spelled it out for her.
I was like walking around my room, like trying to think of the best way to explain it, you know.
Well, she did stay for the long haul, so maybe she'll discuss the outcome of that, since, there are probably 3 people in town dying to hear how that turned out. So,
I
Well,
know. I was kind of surprised to see that article in that much detail, because this is such a non-controversial project. Like, we've had so many projects that have made such a bigger splash and are so much more visible. Like, it's so
Right.
tucked away. People don't care. Like,
I think
it's
she needed something to write about.
where there's currently a parking lot in a hotel that functionally exists now. It's like I was like, okay, one, I missed it, but obviously I missed it because it's not going to make headlines anywhere. Like, it was just kind of an anomaly of an article. It's like someone's paying really close attention to us for a reason I can't tell.
well, and now all of our meetings are on GCTV's website, so people can go back
Yeah.
and watch them all and catch up.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
Well, actually,
Riveting action there.
I actually did know somebody who actually owns the house that's gonna be
Oh,
turned
wow.
down. And previously had said it was not gonna be torn down, and when she read the article, it was when she found out it was gonna be torn down.
Mm,
So,
Oh,
so there was somebody got some information out of it.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
oh, that's sad.
That's really sad.
Yeah, well, they were planning on selling
If you're
anyway, but it-
selling your property to a Hampton Inn that's right next door, it would be pretty, I don't know. I guess what would a Hampton Inn want to do with it other than redevelop that property?
yeah. Well, I guess, first they were gonna put the parking lot in supposedly, and then supposedly no, they were gonna let the people stay, and then we're living. I don't know.
Mm.
That was
Oh
just kind of
dear.
that building actually used to be the very first Turnbull's restaurant, I guess.
The
Way
house?
before, before the one that was on the Mohawk Trail, across from Big Y. It was actually there first, I guess. Yeah. Just a little bit of trivia.
Oh, just to clarify something from earlier in the meeting, I did make a motion to postpone the item that we were on to go to the mayor. And I've been doing some reading of Robert's Rules of Order since our last meeting. And so I was, basically I came to the conclusion we either needed to postpone that one until after that, or we needed to suspend the rules in order to proceed to whatever agenda item that we wanted. Those are like the two ways to do things out of order. And like if we postpone it, then you just go to the next thing. So if the next thing's not what you want, then you got to postpone again. So we either need to like postpone to go to the next one or suspend the rules. And then you have to specify suspending the rules to take up this agenda item out of order. So just a little clarification on Robert's Rules of Order that I did not know before
Good to know.
that meeting. Now I do. And that is not a debatable motion. Just like a motion to adjourn is not debatable.
No discussion needed.
No discussion.
Is that a segue?
Could be. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a
I'll
second? All right, motion to adjourn by Erica, seconded by Rachel. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? I guess Fletcher's abstaining. All right, so passes four votes. Yes, one abstaining. The meeting is over at 9:23. Oh, 9:24. It was 9:23 when we adjourned.
This is 9:23 on my clock, so.
Okay.
It still
Well,
says
just
9:24. Get it right,
There you go.
Travis. Come on.